Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 You have to put So this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the 5th canto, which is entitled, I don't remember. This is the title of the 5th canto. No, 5th canto. Universe. I don't know. I bet there's more words to it. Well, actually, I can look it up. 5th canto. Srimad. The creative impetus. Why creative impetus? I don't know. 557. Chapter 5, Lord Rishabhadeva's teachings to his sons. And we're on text 7. Increase this so I can see it. Yadana pasyatyayata guneham svarte pramatta sahasa vipaschit gata smritir vindati tatra tapan asadyamai tunyama agaramagyam yadana pasyatyatata guneham svarte pramatta sahasa vipaschit gata smritir vindati tatra tapan asadyamai tunyamagaram. Would anyone like to chant? Yadana pasyatyayata guneham svarte pramatta sasa vipaschit gata smritir vindati tatra tapan asadyamai tunyamagaramagya. Ladies.
Yadana pasyatyayata guneham svarte pramatta sahasa vipaschit gata smritir vindati tatra tapan asadya maitunyamagaram. What's your native tongue? What is your native tongue? Hungarian. Okay. Yada na pasyatyayata guneham svarte pramatta sahasa vipaschit gata smritir vindati tatra tapan asadya maitunyamagaramagya. What is your native tongue? Swiss German. Oh, just you can tell the way people pronounce Sanskritam. Yeah, we can tell a Latino. You can definitely tell an American. Yada, when, na, not, pashyati, sees, ayatam, unnecessary, gunayam, endeavor to satisfy the senses. How does that work? Svaarte, in self-interest. Pramataha, mad. Sasam, very soon. Vipaschit, even one advanced in knowledge. Gata smriti, being forgetful. Vindati, gets. Tatra, there. Tapan, material miseries. Asadya, getting. Maitunyam, based on sexual intercourse. Agaram, a home. Agyaha, being foolish. Translation to this is, even though one may be very learned and wise, he is mad if he does not understand that the endeavor for sense gratification is a useless waste of time. Yadana pashyati. So, when one doesn't see ayataha guneham svarte pramata sasa vipaschit. So no svarta pramata. Gata smritir. Gata. How does that work? Gata vindati tatra tapa. Okay. So that the endeavor for sense gratification is a useless waste of time. Being forgetful of his own interest, he tries to be happy in the material world, centering his interests around his home, which is based on sexual intercourse and which brings him all kinds of material miseries. In this way, one is no better than a foolish animal. There's a lot of purport in the translation. Okay, now the purport. In the lowest stage of devotional life, one is not an unalloyed devotee. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam. To be an unalloyed devotee, one must be freed from all material desires and untouched by fruitive activity in speculative knowledge. On the lower platform, one may sometimes be interested in philosophical speculation with a tinge of devotion. However, at that stage, one is still interested in sense gratification and is contaminated by the modes of material nature. The influence of Maya is so strong that even a person advanced in knowledge actually forgets that he is Krishna's eternal servant. Therefore, he remains satisfied in his householder life, which is centered around sexual intercourse. Conceding to a life of sex, he agrees to suffer all kinds of material miseries. Due to ignorance, one is thus bound by the chain of material laws. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukham karati vachalam pangul langate girim yatkripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhyaeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, does anyone remember anything of what we read? Yes.
Even if one is a learned sage and he doesn't think and he still is attached to sense gratification, he should be considered as a fool, and actually he's not more intelligent than an animal if he thinks so that sense gratification actually is not.
Okay. Anyone else remembers anything? Yeah. And that was repeated, I think, like 3 times. Okay, anything else? Does anyone remember anything else? Yes.
And that usually we are not at the stage of Ananda yet.
Uh-huh.
And then,
Yeah.
sometimes we perform devotion service, but still finished by material desires.
Okay, very well. Well, those are all the major points from the verse and the purport. So, what does the verse itself say?
Happiness in sense gratification.
Yeah, that's stated for sure. What else is stated just in the verse?
I think pretty much the things that I was mentioning.
Yeah, but there's an important difference between the purport and the verse. That's why, and I'm going to point that out. And before I point that out, I'd like to first establish what the verse itself says. Yeah. So basically, what the verse says is that there is a type of ignorance. That actually under the influence of ignorance, one is contaminated by the modes, specifically mode of passion here we could say, but also the mode of ignorance. In the verse itself, there's only reference to the material modes of material nature, but in translation Srila Prabhupada expands by saying that extends this into sense gratification. Different forms of sense gratification. And so, first of all, this is also a topic that requires a little bit of fine-tuning, but so the claim is that the symptom of ignorance is sensual gratification. Now, I guess in order to be precise and fair and accurate, we should point out that we cannot live without sensual gratification, and that sensual gratification in and of itself does not constitute ignorance. but the unnecessary sense gratification constitutes ignorance. Or that the motive for one's activities is sensual gratification. Now, that's a major ignorance. And guess what? Most of the people that have ever lived on this planet are exactly like that. In other words, the motivation for activities is the sensual gratification. See, there's a pyramid of intentions, and then there's the bottom intention. Like your intention might be to eat, but why do you want to eat? To stay alive. Well, why do you want to stay alive? That brings you to the existential question. Anyhow, what I'm trying to say is that that a motivation is a motivation of a motivation. And then the bottom motivation is the one that motivates it all. And this is the reason why you do things. So if the motivation for doing things is sensual gratification, then one is in a major ignorance. That's really an animal. Yes?
Isn't always something even behind that motive?
No, there's the bottom motive. There's the bottom motive.
Are you certain about that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not.
Yeah, sure, no problem. But that's described even in our own literature, that there's the bottom motive. And as a matter of fact, a process of self-realization involves discovering to your own self the bottom motive which you are not aware of at all times. But that's a bottom motive from which other motives germinate.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah, because about myself, I felt like, okay, I dig deep and deep, and then I said, oh yeah, then there's sense gratification, but then even digging deeper, and I see as something more.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think about many people, they think that their body motivation is sense gratification, maybe, but even there's something deeper.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I don't think that the sense gratification is ever the bottom motive.
Yeah.
But it's one of the motives. Yeah. No, that's for sure. I agree with that. My analysis points to the same thing when I think about it. But if we were to take a slice of our motivations, not necessarily going all the way to the bottom one, which if it was stripped of everything would be just motive to be happy. But the concept of what you think you are, what is success and so on, will make you go about being happy in varieties of ways. And so if you think yourself a material product or whatnot, then you are thinking in terms of sense gratification. And so sense gratification becomes the motive. And to whomever this is the motive, we can know for sure this is very, very animalistic. And this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam really hacks at it, like heavily. And this section of the Bhagavatam was, we're going to fall asleep. You're good. A little tired. This section of the Srimad Bhagavatam used to be super popular. It was so popular that and when I think about it, it wasn't popular for all the right reasons, but anyhow. It was so popular that when we used to go to the annual festival in Mayapur, centered around Gaura Purnima, then always these verses were selected as the verses for all the morning classes. Year after year. anyhow, I mean, there is a reason also why devotees were so obsessed by this, because the obsession is another form. It's just a flip side of attachment. In other words, there was the profound function exactly on this platform, so therefore there was a need to rebel strongly against it and attack it and hack at it, bomb it, destroy it, burn it. But it doesn't work just like that. I mean, you can hear about it a billion times and still remain an animal. I mean, every evil in this world lies in this bush. In other words, the wars, the conflicts, the abuse. It always boils down to what's the motivation of one's activities. Like, what's the thing that motivates me to do things? Is the personal gratification, or specifically sensual gratification. Where is it? Here. And so what Srila Prabhupada then does in the purport is that Srila Prabhupada points out, and this is, by the way, at least when I started to rediscover the world of religion, for me this was a great motivator. And you can sit in a chair or go sleep. Yeah, it's very. I'm trying to speak, but it's very distracting. I mean, it's my fault. It's my shortcoming. But do you mind then, like, maybe sitting in the back, or so you're not just like right in front of me? Yeah, I'm by no means have ill feelings. It's just that speaking requires a lot of energy. You have to focus your thoughts, and then distractions don't help. Thank you for understanding. So Srila Prabhupada points out that in the world of religion, you have a spectrum. That it's not all one thing. As we used to think. When you say devotee, and sometimes devotees, even nowadays, there are devotees who think like that if you have a devotee, that's a devotee. But there is a spectrum of devotees. and so what Prabhupada's saying by stating this is that there's plenty of devotees. I mean, that's interesting. You're a devotee, and yet you're soaking in this kind of ignorance. So even though you have this kind of colossal ignorance, I mean, this is really animalistic, that the motive to you to do things is not because things are good, because they make sense, because truth will set you free, because truth is unifying, because truth is to benefit to all. No, you fall asleep when you hear it. You have no interest in these kind of things. But what motivates you is some sort of pleasure. Pleasure to, I don't know, to dominate a group. There's a lot of people find their place in a communal life where they have find some kind of importance. This is really basic. Basic means that's not a compliment. To be a base person. What's a German term for base person? Yeah. German's also your native language? Primitive, yeah. Yeah, primitive. Because prima means first. And primitive means like first, but at the bottom. And so primitive means like there's just one thing. Prima means one. There's just one thing. Like there's no variegatedness to it's just very base person. There's just the raw animalistic urge that manifests in varieties of ways. One is to find a pleasure in the social hierarchy dominance.
So you agree that it's like kind of necessary to satisfy these needs to a certain degree in order to overcome them, or how is it?
Let's keep these questions to the end, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a good question, by the way. And I am planning to run through this presentation quickly and leave plenty of time for discussion. A base person, but a devotee. You see, it's just like, there's the logic of the heap. You know what a heap is? A pile. And let's say you have a pile of rice. And you take one grain from the pile. And you ask yourself, is this a pile? Yes. Then you take another grain of rice from it. And you ask the question, is this a pile? Yes. And this you keep taking. And every time you take a grain out, you ask yourself whether it's a pile. But in one point you can't say it's a pile anymore. And you can't really tell at which point it's not a pile anymore. At which point? When you have 3 grains, 2 grains, 10 grains? At which point it's not a pile anymore? Well, that's how life is. Even the difference between the day and night. It's not in 1 second. Day is present in the night, and night is present in the day, as there are switching over. But in one point, you definitely say, man, it's a night. Or it's daytime. But you see how there's a huge spectrum. So also, you call someone a devotee and you really wonder it's like comparing day and night, where devotee is day and non-devotees is night. But you have, there's part of the day where you have more elements of night than of the day. So that's the situation. And I really appreciated when I was, because I grew up, for God's sake, hearing all these religious fairy tales. Where you just proclaim your faith in Jesus and you're saved. To hell no! That's stupid. If that's reality, then I goodbye. I can't. That's way too dumb. But there's plenty of devotees who also speak like this. They think that they are going to be doctrinally saved. You proclaim a doctrine and therefore you're saved. I don't know. There are elements of darkness in the day. And in some point, while you still think it's a day, you have more elements of darkness. Like that. So I really appreciated this. Not because, what's interesting, not because I thought that Srila Prabhupada put the world in place, so to speak, but he put me in place. Gave me, he pointed out things I need to work on. And literally illuminated the path of liberation. Instead of, telling the religious fairy tale, you just believe, you just subscribe, be a member. Subscribe to the doctrine and you're saved. I don't know. So that's what Srila Prabhupada does. And then Srila Prabhupada gives an example of 3 times of sex life and apparently family life, which is, it's interesting because we find this fine analysis that points to a spectrum. And then we have married life presented without a spectrum. For the life of me, I can't accept that. Because I don't think that married life is an obstacle. I think there is a spectrum to it too. But what's interesting, even I don't know if I'm allowed to quote Prabhupada, I may lose job. But Prabhupada said about women, they cannot be in the mode of goodness. Like you're a female, then it's like man may not be in the mode of goodness, but you can train the guy. This is what he said. So, but what I think, which is another statement which for the life of me, I cannot see as an absolute statement, because I think there's a spectrum to it again. But what I can see is the elements of passionate life, of the mode of rajas, in the family life, and in which I will not cover, but I will refer to because Prabhupada said so, in the female body. Which doesn't mean that there is no passion to be found in the male body. I think that's just super inaccurate. There is a spectrum. And so within the family life, you can have this kind of the mode of passion. Which boils down the motivation for your existence to the sensual gratification. And Srila Prabhupada points out to sex life. Now, whether he's thinking of just a physical sexual act or he's thinking, again, of a spectrum of it in a sense that, like when Prabhupada visited this one fellow, he had a huge family, so he was introducing his son, his daughter, his wife, and Prabhupada then says, his comment was, "This is my sex life." Like, what is he telling me? This is my sex life. Because, one thing that it's maybe even quite difficult for us to comprehend, a personality like Srila Prabhupada, or anyone who actually grew up in those days, or even nowadays in India, for example. Like, it's hard for us to comprehend that there is no... For me, like, I thought nightlife, all of my life until I met people from other parts of the world, I thought nightlife, like, everyone has nightlife, That's when you go out, do dumb stuff, come back the following day, all beat up and, thinking, man, I had so much fun, I can't remember a thing. But then, not only that, but I found out that people in India grow up and marry without ever having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I had a bunch. Not only me, it's just everybody. That's if you didn't, you were like, what, super unusual. You were a total loser or something. You had like 5 ears attached to your head or something, But you have cultures where people, like, this kind of passionate life just doesn't exist. Like, people, go through the whole lustful puberty without having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or nightlife. I remember first time I went to Nigeria. Like, you go to these big cities and, when the stores close in the afternoon, like, humongous city is dead. No nightlife. I was like, wow. Man, what a surprise. Middle East, there's no nightlife. These are different civilizations. So when we refer to sex life, what are we? I don't know who's and whether they're referring to. Like I remember this Indian fellow who got butchered on YouTube because there was some video in which men and women are dancing and they're all fully clothed. There's no sexual activity, but it's all sexually suggestive. And his comment was, "What is this pornography?" There was his comment. Oh man, these Americans just like shredded him to pieces, comparing him to Taliban, to being backwards, to being uneducated, to being a brute, to be like. What it was a clash of civilizations. We're totally desensitized. It's all around us. I mean, our temple in San Diego, you have Good Look Naked Yoga, tanning salon with a huge poster of a woman in micro bikini, which I didn't even know what it was, but it's like the smallest pieces of clothing on her, and a ganja store in the front, and you have 50 brahmacharis, men in their 20s. But but over here, in India, he saw men and women dancing, and he said, "What the hell is this?" In sexually suggestive ways. Or I remember, I was I set up a brahmachari website. And because, I wanted to create a place where these young men can anonymously discuss things which they'd be ashamed to discuss with someone else, with having to reveal their identity. And here, they could create anonymous account, give it any name they wanted to, and just freely discuss stuff. And so I would publish articles. Just a side note. By far, the most popular post was what do you call when they cut up a dead body? What's the procedure called? Biopsy. There was a biopsy of a female body. So they cut it all up, skin, and you just see, the body like being peeled off. I thought that was really funny. That was by far the most popular post.
I didn't get it like...
No, the post was just a video of a biopsy.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, that's what you do when you think analytically of something. Well, see, you feel like you're losing power because you have an attachment to a thing, And then when you analyze the thing, by the way, the process of analyzing always has this effect of empowering you, like gaining power over the thing that has power over you. So at least it's a beginning, And so biopsy, it's same like Sankhya or analysis of the thing, because basically that's what you're doing, And I remember in one lecture, Bhakti Swami was giving a lecture, and he said, "What is this skin deep beauty?" And then he described, imagine you take all that skin and put it on a platter and you walk around with it, and I say it's like a pudding. And I remember we had a Pujari Mataji, she almost vomited. What's that?
She imagined it very well.
Yeah. I guess she was listening carefully. But So that's a process of analysis, because when you break it down, you don't feel that disempowerment anymore. So anyhow, I went off. But what I was going to say is that I published a post. It was, I don't know, some kind of a quote that I don't even remember anymore. But the picture, I put a picture to accompany this. It was a picture of a man and a woman conversing. And, the guy was in a suit and she was in they're both business people. And she was dressed in a skirt, skirt like up to here, And maybe she was just, for Western standards, just dressed decently, But these Indian brahmacharis got on my case. What kind of pictures are you putting? Like, yeah, And so I wasn't annoyed by it at all, But it was very, very eye-opening how we're coming from two very different cultures, Like they grew up never seeing, female leg below the knee, And I grew up seeing way more than that, all the time. So there was again, a clash of civilizations. Like I lived in a civilization where mode of passion was just widely accepted, and that's why this is not a culture of knowledge. There's in several places where Srila Prabhupada says that the culture of knowledge begins with tapasya. In other words, if there is no element of tapasya, you cannot know. Bhoga Ishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Apahrita Chetasam. When there's attachment to enjoyment and opulence, then apahrita, then conscious cetasa is confused. That's the mode of passion. And what's a symptom of mode of passion? The symptom mode of passion is intense desire. And the funniest of all things is how we, even many devotees, identify this passion as love. But what the hell are you talking about? You're completely out of your mind. And when you're under the passion, you are completely out of your mind. Romeo and Juliet. Mode of passion. And that Prabhupada says here, and it will be repeated in these verses many times, in this section of the Bhagavatam. Sexual attraction, maituna bhava. And this attraction is not only physical, like grossly physical. I don't know what female experience someone sees a male, but I as a male, I know the passionate experience of a female. My passionate experience of a female, and it tends to provoke this desire that you have no control over. Intense desire. That's the mode of passion. And the funny, thing is, in modern culture, we give it a name: love. What? You people are insane. Because the whole culture is insane. And the product of the mode of passion is gratification of the senses. My emotional gratification, my mental gratification, and even my tactile and what other sensual gratification. So that's the mode of passion. And the other elements, what's the other pronounced, very much standing out characteristic of the mode of passion? characteristic of the mode of passion.
Greed, right?
I mean, you're right, but there's one that's really...
Never be satisfied.
Never. That's also true. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, there's no satisfaction there. And you may. I was a teenager when I said enough of this. Like I could see that this is going nowhere, man. Like you can never satisfy this. And while satisfying, there's this follower of Jung, a follower in a sense that a very famous psychologist, Mary von, German also, I forget her name now, doesn't matter. She wrote a lot of really good books. And she speaks of this loss of a teenager. What is that loss? It's a loss when the teenager is lost in sexual fantasies. You know, the hormones are boiling, all of this, and the poor guy or girl, that's all they can think about. You know, and years, it's just a miracle that they finish school. But, you know, their minds there is completely hijacked by... I remember friends of mine saying, I can hardly wait to marry, I'll have sex every day. Which, by the way, doesn't happen to anyone who marries, but that's another... just hijacked by intense desire. But no, there's something really important, one very important element to the mode of passion. That is the fruitive desire. Fruitive desire. So you see this fruitive, because once mode of passion is like a stick. Whichever side of the stick you pick the whole thing. And so by associating with the lower modes of material nature, now particularly the mode of passion, by associating with, you're developing all of the qualities of the mode of passion. That's also described in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna says that the path to liberation is through mode of goodness. Very interesting. Like, and Krishna says too that one of the last things Krishna ever said, he said that the love for God is a product of the mode of goodness. I mean, very interesting statement. And therefore, by cultivating the mode of goodness, you cultivate the qualities. By cultivating the lifestyle of the mode of goodness, you're cultivating the qualities of the mode of goodness, the natural product of which is love for me. Very interesting statement. So the same thing works with the mode of passion. You know, you allow to be pulled into the lifestyle of the mode of passion, then you develop the qualities of the mode of passion. And this very important thing called fruitive desires or fruitive work is such an important subject matter that's in the Bhagavatam. It is discussed. There are several chapters dedicated only to this. And there's a whole lot of sections that refer to it, and not just like briefly, but substantially. So I might have produced it here. Yeah. Description by Lord Kapila of adverse fruitive activities. Entanglement in fruitive activities. The material world is a great forest of enjoyment. That's coming up here. Liberation from the illusory energies, a discussion of. Then the nature of fruitive. These are all different chapters that deal. That's the subject matter of these whole chapters. Just fruitive. Why is this such a huge problem? Fruitive activity, because fruitive activity is the antithesis to love or devotion. Mm. And what's interesting, it only displays some elements which people in ignorance may call love or devotional word. No, but they're not. They're exactly the opposite. There's a vast difference between love and lust. And so, because it's an antithesis to devotion, to love, it's a greatly pollutant. It's a great pollutant. Now, so there's. I guess I'll stop there because I should leave some time for discussion. Any questions or comments, perhaps? Yes, Munindra.
Thank you very much for the inspiration. It was a very nice deep topic. My question is, I had also many thoughts of this topic. I mean, what I'm asking, also in the Nectar of Instruction, is Rupa Goswami writing in the first verse when we can tolerate these different urges, like also for the genitals was now a topic.
Yeah.
My question is, and also I meditated, is it possible ever to overcome it or only to tolerate it? Because Rupa Goswami is not writing to complete overcome it or it is at some point destroyed.
So there's the... I have 4 areas that I travel to, and my traveling pattern is 2 months travel, 1 month off. And so that means I do 4 tours a year in 4 different parts of the world. I come everywhere once. And so each tour I prepare some kind of a lecture for, not for devotee audiences, but for what we would call outside audiences. And so one presentation I had was humans and technology, humans and this. It's interesting to see, how we as humans deal with certain phenomena. And so one of these presentations is humans and sex. And so in one point I inherited some properties and I had to go to a tax office to sort some documentation, and there were 6 women, they're all over 50 there. And so the Swami dressed as a monk, so what are you, blah blah blah, and so what I travel, I give lectures, and what kind of lectures? So I mentioned humans and sex, and because it was on the list of one of the recent lectures, and all 6 of them, sex, because they're in their 50s. When they're in their 20s, they didn't feel like that, and they all said that. Now when they came of age, just the thought of sex is like, for God's sake, disgusting. So I thought about it many times, and obviously lots, even diet, even if you change diet, you can change the nature of your urges. Like if you eat passionately, you will experience more passion. So it's interesting how, or if you get a body of a dog, or even better, if you get a body of an ostrich. Do you know what ostrich is? Yeah, big bird has a tendency to stick its head in the sand when there is danger. So we were in Mayapur once, and there was an ostrich or something like it. I don't know, big bird, tiny little legs, and and it came out of its thing, and kind of shook its feathers, and then there was another one that came closer and looking at her, at this bird. And Prita Prabhu was with us, and he was making fun, joke. and imitating as if the other bird was saying, "Oh, sexy legs." But to us was just like, what the hell? Yeah, but it's interesting. Like, you get a body of an ostrich and you find that kind of shape sexually attractive. You know, it comes with the body. I mean, in one place, Srila Prabhupada says that the purpose of sexual attraction is procreation. He said, without that, hardly anyone would procreate. And I was just a teenage boy when I read this, and I was thinking, man, I don't want to be just a guinea pig in the universal factory of procreation. But that's what's happening. And people call it love, and I remember one Mataji approached my friend, wanted to marry him, and he came back, said, yeah, she's so nice, she's a devotee. This guy lost his head. And then he quoted her for having said that, we will do this, we will travel, we will preach, we will read Prabhupada's books, and we will have divine kids. It's the mode of completely confused. And what it is, it comes with the body, It's built into the body. And so, what it means to lose urges, like, when you're hungry, you feel it. When you're tired, you feel it. You have to sleep. And you can, for some reason, you can, okay, I won't say that because that would require debate. So it seems that it's built into the body, but it also seems that the body responds to the nature of our consciousness, like how we experience things. Like, once I saw that this was just a factory for baby production, I was like, no, I don't want to be a guinea pig. I greatly lost interest, And then also, if you see, what's the nature of the mode of passion, so as your consciousness changes, or as you become more sattvic, then you lose interest, you lose attraction to the passion or passionate things. So, what it means to lose the urge. I mean, Srila Prabhupada had kids. Does that mean that he was... I mean, in order to have kids, you have to be sexually aroused. I mean, that's how that act works. So that means that urge was functioning in him. I'm just thinking out loud, like brutally, honestly, instead of just... quoting statements of people who are completely disassociated from this world. But I think Prabhupada was disassociated from this world in the sense that it was transcendental. Yet he had kids. So what it really means to lose the urge. I don't think that the urge. If you have defined consciousness, I don't think the urge has a control over you. And neither do I think that it's gross, because even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, dharma aviruddho kameshu bhutos, that karma, very interesting state, dharma aviruddha, that means you can have karma that is dharmic or adharmic. Dharmic means natural, because dharma means the nature of something. We're naturalists, by the way. So dharma means there's a natural form of it, and there's the unnatural form of it. And now the good question is precisely where is the difference? Might be just another one of those pile of rice logic type of a thing. which probably is, there's a spectrum. So I would say the same thing about the urges, they could be dharmic or adharmic.
Or it can be dharmic, Maharaj, for a kshatriya who's more in passion, or?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkincham jagatyam, that everything belongs to God, and you just have a right to use a little bit for your maintenance. Well, why do kshatriyas live in opulence? Because they need it. But they actually do. They have to dominate the society. Because believe it or not, humans are mostly like primates. The monkeys. What they do to each other, it's so brutal. They're like dismember. You know what it means to dismember? Like pull the limbs out of the body, by force. And that's what humans do. This is the history. Every time humans are allowed to do what they want to do, that's what they do. But right now we live under the threat of violence from a civilized society, violence from law and law enforcement, and social ostracism, so we tend not to think like that. But when you put people in a position where they can do any damn thing they want to, then you see what they do. That's war. I was in war. You just can't believe what people do. And every time there is such a situation, people do such things. But why was I saying this?
The urge, nature of the urge.
Yeah. No, there was something about control, I can't remember now. Because my mind got hijacked by
kshatriyas.
Kshatriyas, yeah. So kshatriyas have to dominate society. Just like the law needs to dominate. Otherwise what you have is you don't want that. No one wants that. The funniest are religious people who say, no, we're all saints. I've seen those saints. When they're allowed to do what they want to do. When you remove all of the pressure, because we live constantly under the pressure. So Kshatriya actually needs the opulence like that to dominate the society, and it's according to their nature. And this is also a very interesting concept that God has created certain humans like that, and therefore their position within the body, the universal body of God, is the position of the hands to keep everything in check physically. And so even though they're passionate, but their passion has a divine purpose. Like that, which very often involves a relationship with multiple women. So for a kshatriya, it was considered, natural to have more than one wife. You were going to say something? Yeah. No. Okay. It's 8:35. Were you gonna? No.
Yes. So my question was like, how did I phrase it? Like, if we need to satisfy the primal needs in order to overcome them.
Oh yeah. that really depends. That really depends. So, for example, every society has a threshold. And threshold which is not always as clearly defined, but there's like really bottom threshold, and if you don't make at least that much high, then you end up in jail. Like society just puts you in jail, like you're too barbaric. But then there are cultural requirements. Where the force is not as brute, but there are cultural requirements that you subdue. For example, I mean, you don't see that much of that anymore, but I remember when I was a child, when talking to an older person, you wouldn't look him into the eyes. Like that was considered rude, like you look down. There's no... or walk into a restaurant with a hat on, you'd be like, what is this brute? Or, go to certain establishments dressed not elegantly enough. So, what I'm saying is that throughout history there has always been some kind of a pressure to act above a certain level, and if you didn't, you were just not considered very civilized. And so, very interesting. I mean, the land of India, very very interesting. For example, you have sadhus where the sophistication is not seen in terms of your elegancy of your clothing, but typically your ability to control sensual urges, to withdraw from the typical field of fruitive activities, and doesn't matter what you resorted to accomplish this was really not important. So you have Naga Babas, Babas that walk around naked. Yogi this, yogi that, sadhu, typically. And I remember watching one documentary of India, super old documentary, where this British lady is saying that it almost seems that there is an intimate connection between, how did she put it, unusual dressing and spiritual elevation. Like, I mean, she's seen all of the sadhus, with their physical appearance being very unconventional. But that was the convention, anyhow. So what you find is that there are different levels of threshold for being considered a member of civilized society or to be civilized, which means also that even if you want to slap someone, you're not going to do that. Rather, you may express yourself in words and not even gross words, but like swear words and whatnot. But actually, you'll express yourself even in such a situation elegantly, like that. So these are all the things that we have a control of. Like you have an urge, but you're holding on to. But then what's interesting in Krishna consciousness, we do have a concept that certain urges you cannot resist, and therefore you should not resist. Like the urge to marry, like if someone wants to marry, like you don't tell the person not to. Or to tell a woman, especially women, I mean for men too, but for women more so, to not have a child. Like that, you'd be considered insane. You'd be considered adharmic. In other words, there are certain things that are just they come with this body, and there's no not that there is no point, but it's even counterproductive to try to ignore or not act upon these, but rather you should act upon it, but within the sophistication process of, in our case, Krishna consciousness, like that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
But there's a lot of room for cheating there, you know, because you always have these people who say, no, I have to do it, but they don't, they just, anyhow. Okay, we're way over time. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki